Can you maybe give us some insights into what's going on and how maybe TIA is trying to decrease the amount of double brokering, and why isn't the government, like the FBI, taking like a bigger stand?
So, yeah, I mean, so I think this has happened where there have been this enormous increase in double brokering when you have a down market, which we're in the middle of, right? So that's why you're seeing it. And that's why our members are going ape. And that's the first thing on their mind. And they think it's an existential threat to the freight industry. And I don't disagree, because it's the perfect crime. Because to your point, nothing happens. There are no consequences. Why are there no consequences? Well, so there's just no enforcement.
Welcome to another episode of the FreightCaviar Podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of the freight and logistics industry. Today, we are honored to have a distinguished guest with us, Anne Reinke, the president and CEO of the Transportation Intermediaries Association, also known as TIA. With over 20 years of experience in corporate transportation policy and political spheres, Anne brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to her role at TIA. In today's conversation, we'll be discussing pressing issues in the freight brokerage industry, the impact of technology on the future of freight, and how the TIA is supporting its members through education, best practices, and advocacy. Thank you for joining us today, Anne. Can you give us a little background on yourself and what your role is at TIA?
Sure. Thank you for having me. And how much time do you want me to talk about myself? I'll just talk about the next 45 minutes and I'll do this
as long as you need.
No. So I am a Washington, D.C. native, and I got into transportation randomly, like many people in the transportation space. You don't necessarily have a trajectory. I'm a lawyer and I went to law school, but being a lawyer and then practicing law is not for everyone. In fact, many lawyers don't wish to practice law. So I got into lobbying, and I started out at a very small association. And then I went to the Association of American Railroads, then to CSX, which is a big freight railroad here on the East Coast. Was there for 16 years and headed their lobbying shop, their DC office. And so, as you know, railroads are heavily regulated. So they need a Washington office. And you've been paying attention to what's going on with the railroads here the last month. I am thankful that I am no longer lobbying for railroads, because it is an extraordinarily tough time to be in the railroad industry. But
a railroad.
Well, yeah, it's very tough. I went to the Department of Transportation for 18 months. I'd never worked for the government, and it was eye-opening. I'm glad for the experience, but I also recognize being a government employee is not for everyone. It's certainly a valuable profession. It's just not for everyone. There's a lot of bureaucracy. I got this opportunity at TIA in October of 2020. I took it and welcomed it with open arms. And what I found is our members, we have about 2,000 now nationwide, are the sort of most entrepreneurial, most generous and giving of their knowledge and best practices, and how to stay out of mistakes. If you do make mistakes, how do you improve your business? How do you scale upwards? How do you really avoid things that they have gone through? We have 4 core competencies, I would say. We are advocates, right? I talked about lobbying. Not every company and not every organization that is a member of TIA has either the bandwidth or the resources to employ a lobbyist, nor not the interest. And so we are the ones representing you on the Hill and in front of regulatory agencies. And why? Because we are also a regulated industry, certainly not as regulated as the railroads, but we are regulated. And so when decisions are made, we need to be at the table explaining how they will affect our membership. And so that is something we take very, very seriously. We also provide education, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but we have resources for those people just starting out in the brokerage industry, to those who are in the middle of their career trying to advance themselves, and to the very senior folks who are looking to become part of an executive or C-suite. And so we have everything in between on a variety of topics. We also have networking events, and I know we're going to talk about our annual conference, but we have 3 key events which get people together. And that's where you really see our industry shine, because again, they're very generous. We really have an opportunity to learn from one another, which is terrific. And the next one is April. I hope you all are there. We'll talk about that, I'm sure.
I'll be there. And Chris,
if I get invited, I'll be there too, but I don't think I'll be invited.
The invitation Yeah, the invitation can come on the website. You just go to tianet.org. There's your invitation. But we
Really?
also,
Oh, okay.
the last thing we do is member services. So, you're required to have a bond. So we work with Avalon to provide a bond. We also have a watchdog tool, which allows us to report on carriers or non-members who we believe have done something wrong. That's a very active site right now, as you might expect.
Sure.
And we provide other services for our marketplace. So associates who provide a service, we let other members know about them. So that's sort of us in a nutshell.
Very interesting.
And what did you
Great.
say that the name of the carrier watch was? This a TIA product?
Yeah, it's a TIA watchdog. And so what that does is it provides a forum for our members. It's limited just to our members. Non-members are not, they are not allowed to post to it, but our members post about negative experiences they may have had with a non-member or a carrier. And then they'll say, for example, they have no shows or double brokering incidents or things like that. That will appear on the Watchdog platform.
Sure. I wonder how Bob's MC's on the
I was
Watchdog.
just about to say that. Can we look up my company?
You know what? If you've never received a notification, that's a good news, because unlike some tools, we notify the entity that is being named and allow them time to respond, and just out of the interest of fundamental fairness. But also, sometimes there's two sides to every story. So we have found, for example, we have found out that there are some who reported wrongdoing on behalf of the carrier, and it turns out the carrier had not done anything wrong. So these are the kinds of things that we can vet by having this platform.
Sure.
So is it kind of like FreightCaviar technically, or no? Is it like similar to that, or?
Yeah, it is. And, there are a lot of these they all do something slightly different, but there are a lot of these kinds of watchdog or what have you tools, which are basically like you want to check before you make any decision about which carrier you're going to choose. So yes, and it really is sort of that extra step. It's very helpful to our smaller members in particular who may not be able to afford subscriptions to other outside things. And this comes as part of your membership. And so, these other resources can be expensive if you're just starting out. Definitely. So our small members tend to rely on it.
Anne, you mentioned that you have 2,000 members. Can you break down, are they all freight brokers, or is it split with like different companies as well? Different fields?
So the majority of them are freight brokers. And I would say 80% of them are gross annual revenue of under 50 million. So what that means is we have a lot of very small companies that may have been passed down through generations as opposed to being publicly traded. We do have the large publicly traded companies as well. And they fit all kinds of niches. So while they are by and large truck facing, meaning they connect with, LTL or truckload, we do have some who are intermodal marketing companies or who connect with ocean going vessels or drayage or any of that. So we have, when I say niches too, what is so interesting about our membership is the ones that really make a name for themselves are the ones who specialize. For example, we have a member locally who only does oversized and overdimensional freight. And so that's the equipment that he knows. So he'll connect with carriers that have that capacity, right? Your gooseneck trailers, et cetera. And so that's his niche, and he's known for that. And so that's a tremendous thing for a shipper who needs to have that oversized equipment to contact him, and he'll always be able to be a resource and provide that capacity. And we have other members who the only thing they do is pharmaceuticals. And so they have very tight relationships with their carriers in addition to their shippers, because that's specialized equipment. Some of that equipment has to be, refrigerated at a certain temperature. And so they have those carriers that they only work with.
Sure. Interesting. And as a lawyer and with a background in like law, and what kind of advice would you give to a freight brokerage or a trucking company that has, kind of dispute? Can you provide us some context from like both angles, for like a freight broker who has a problem with the trucking company, and then for, let's say, Bob, who has a problem with the broker maybe getting paid, or maybe they lied and cheated him? Can you provide us like some, some examples of like how someone should proceed in a situation? of wrongdoing?
Sure. Yeah, and TIA is not here in the middle to mediate disputes. That is not our role. We don't have the competency to do that. And that is not our function. The TIA watchdog simply allows a forum for posting information, and we validate it. So I don't want you to think that we're going to solve your legal problems, because that is not what we do.
I just wanted to more pick on. I wanted to more pick your brain on the law aspect.
Yeah. I got it. Okay. I just didn't want you to start having like TIA hotline. Can we help you? Yes, because we don't do that. But I would say this: our members have an ethical obligation. We have a mandate that we must follow, which is we have to, practice our business fairly, transparently, and treat people well. So our members, if they don't do that, then that is a serious concern. We have an ethics committee. And so if they're not paying their drivers, for example, they're not paying their carriers, or if they are themselves doing double brokering, that is seriously an offense, and something that we would have rise to a level of our membership review board and potentially, terminate membership. I guess my advice is this, that to the extent you can solve it yourself, that's the best step, because it's the least expensive step. Hopefully you can work with someone who is a contact with you. If you're the carrier that you work with on a regular basis, to me, the best thing is to have a relationship, because then you have someone who's a point of contact that you can always turn to, and that it won't blow up into this enormous sort of legal dispute. I mean, if we all were smart enough to just work with people we knew, then we would never have a problem. But obviously, when the capacity has been so constrained, you're not always going to be able to work with people that you know. And now, as capacity is softening, you're not always going to be able to work with brokers that you always work with, right? We know that. But so if you can't, So if you can't work with someone that you already know and that you don't work with, I think really maintaining accurate records and not writing terrible things over email, even if you're in the right. I have seen such a stream of invective of people going back and forth who have legitimately been wronged, but it doesn't, you've got to act professionally at all times. And if you keep good records, then certainly if, like, say, TIA Watchdog is going to file a report, if you keep good records, that is enormously helpful to us. And it's going to be enormously helpful to you if you do end up hiring a lawyer, because you've got that case,
Sure.
Yeah.
It's something that's difficult when you're emotionally just upset. And it's like, typically if you're going to send an angry email, it's like, wait like a day before you send it. And you usually think it through, and then all of a sudden you kind of rewrite stuff. And definitely. Or use ChatGPT to write an email.
Just about to say that.
No, we kind of actually had this happen to us, where actually JB Hunt, they blocked us because apparently like one of the loads got booked by us, and this dispatcher that used to work with us, he doesn't work with us anymore. And this guy calls me like flipping out, like, why didn't you guys pick up the load? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I think something happened in their system where they actually put the load like on our carrier, like that we were supposed to haul it. And then I got to talk to them. He hanged up the phone on me. Like, I reach out to him on an email, like trying to explain to him, like, listen, this guy has not been working with us for a couple months now. I don't know. We never booked this load. And then I call him back. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just in the moment of heat. And he was like flipping out on me for no reason. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry that happened. But like you were saying, that happens all the time. People get their emotions involved, and then he kind of blacklisted us on there for no reason.
Yeah,
so it was pretty crazy.
Well, and you know how people too, unfortunately, we're not an apologetic society anymore, right? We used to be, I think, somewhat, and now we're not, and so no one backs down. So unfortunately,
I still am, though. I'm pretty apologetic, though.
I appreciate that.
I will take responsibility. If we screw up, I will take responsibility. But I know if it's not our fault, I'm like, come on now, So yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that to me, it's like you kind of want to. I don't think you want to ratchet it up first. You want to just ask questions, say, here's what my email trail. Let me get to the bottom of this. I don't think it happened the way you think it happened, but let me figure it out. Right?
Exactly. And you're right. I feel like a lot of people right now, they overthink it really quick, and they're ready to blame everybody else but themselves. Because me and Paul, we have a Instagram page, and I have people always reaching out to me. Hey, can you blast this broker? Hey, can you do this? And I'm like, so what exactly happened? When I start talking to them, it's kind of like half half of that is their fault. And I'm like, why would I blast this broker for you when half of it was your problem, you know, and now you're just trying to blame the broker for it. But yeah, people get so emotionally caught up in stuff like that it leads to nowhere.
Definitely.
And what's interesting too is our business is, you know, we've had now 31,000 registered brokers, from 27,000 in 2019. So you think about 4,000 brokers more. I think we're now at almost at 33,000, quite frankly. And it's because over the last 2.5 years during the pandemic, freight was coming out our ears, right? There was so much freight coming. And I'm sure there were new carriers, owner operators who were starting, they bought a truck, they bought 5 trucks, what have you. There has just been so much freight coming at you, right? And so the point of all that is there are people who are operating in a universe where they've only seen the good days and they don't necessarily know what the bad days look like. So, you know, now we're in a freight slowdown. So that creates, I think, opportunities for emotions to run very high because they're operating in a different, you know, sphere and they don't know how that works. And 2, for fraud, which is where we're seeing all this double brokering go.
Definitely.
Right. We were actually talking about all this double brokering yesterday, and it's crazy what's happening. I feel like now it's affecting even the carriers. Well, if it's affecting the carriers even more because by the time it gets to the owner operator or it gets to the carrier, the rate has been decreased so much. It's passed so many hands where you're like, what the heck? And then the worst part about it is some of these double brokers, they don't even pay you. You know, they'll just sell you a load and they'll be gone in a month or 2.
Yeah, I mean, so it's so interesting to me because what is hitting, like I talked to a journalist on Monday who couldn't believe that we would be against freight brokering. I mean, double brokering. It's like, well, of course we would, because what happens is we talk to someone who we think is a legitimate carrier and we say, all right, we would love you to take this load. And that carrier or fraudulent entity then perpetrates a fraud on the owner operator unsuspectingly, who says, will you take this load? And it seems like that's a legitimate freight broker. And so everyone, including the shipper and the end user, gets hurt because the price, the money, the costs, like we as the broker have to pay twice, right? Probably. Like when that owner operator comes to us and we have no idea who he is and we'll say, who the heck are you? He's like, you're who we're supposed to be doing business with. So, right. and how are you going to find that fraudulent fly by night operation? So you end up, this is a cost of doing business, right? I'm going to pay a driver twice. And so that means, you know, prices go up. And then secondly, where did these loads go? Sometimes they don't go where they're supposed to go. And so you completely lost the chain of custody, which if it's a food or beverage product or a pharmaceutical or a hazmat, that's a real concern.
Yeah. And what's interesting,
how many times have you gone through the experience of getting kind of scammed by say a double broker that you didn't know was a double broker?
Are you asking Bob?
Me?
Bob, yeah.
So we almost got scammed one time, and I remember I actually posted a video on my Instagram, and it kind of went pretty viral because people were like just shocked. But it was our dispatcher that actually is no longer with us. He was trying to book a load. We picked up the load. We got there, and they were like, "Something's not right about this." And then we found out that it was actually a CH load. So we reached out to our rep in CH. We checked the numbers, and he's like, "Yeah, that's one of our loads." They sold it to us for $6,600. And CH sold it to them for like $4,300.
Wow.
So they were definitely not going to pay us. They were just, trying to sell it to us for a higher price and then pick it up. We would deliver it. They would get paid by CH and they would just disappear on us. So we actually ended up hauling it for that price for like 43 instead of the 66, because it was already like a Friday night and we couldn't really take it back. We couldn't really book anything out of there. But yeah, it sucked. It really sucked. And then they kept hitting us up. They're like, yo, did the driver pick it up? Hey, did you get loaded? Please send the BOLs. We just completely ignored it because I realized it's better just to ignore them than to actually start fighting them back or like
they're actual scammers.
Yeah, or talking crap back because you just don't even want to deal with that.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And we actually talked about this yesterday with Kevin Hill, which was like, we're wondering why hasn't more been done to stop these double brokers, these scammers. And I'm wondering, Anne, if you could kind of tell us why it's like, I feel like the problem is just perpetrating and it's growing. There's nothing that's we're not seeing any changes and it's not decreasing. Can you maybe give us some insights into what's going on and how maybe TIA is trying to decrease the amount of double brokering, and why isn't the government, like the FBI, taking like a bigger stand?
So, yeah, I mean, so I think this has happened where there have been this enormous increase in double brokering when you have a down market, which we're in the middle of, right? So that's why you're seeing it. And that's why our members are going ape, and that's the first thing on their mind. And they think it's an existential threat to the freight industry. And I don't disagree, because it's the perfect crime. Because to your point, nothing happens. There are no consequences. Why are there no consequences? Well, so there's just no enforcement. Back in 2012, a law was established defining who a broker was. And if you acted as a broker, or if you did illegal double brokering, there were penalties you could complain about on the National Consumer Complaint Database. To date, there are 80,000 complaints in the National Consumer Complaint Database. Not a single one has ever been investigated. And that's now, 11 years? And why is that? So it's a resource issue, certainly, right? The FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, does not necessarily have the resources to investigate all of these, complaints. But it's also seemingly they think that they are handcuffed and they can't actually do much. They don't believe they can legally do anything, for example, to assess civil penalties against a double broker, or an entity, a fraudulent entity that conducts double brokerage, because they believe their narrow portfolio is safety, not commercial disputes. So that is why they themselves think they cannot do it. Now, our argument would be, well, if you can't assess civil penalties, there are things you could do. You could take these entities out of service. You could certainly send them a letter. I mean, quite frankly, the perfect crime is there's no one looking at this. And so if you have a little bit of, I keep saying this, light, heat, and thunder, well, maybe these guys will be like, well, there's probably an easier way to make money, right? Right now, it's too easy for them. It's too easy. There's no one looking at them. The only state that I've heard about, so forget about the feds for a second. The only state that I've heard about that has an interest in investigating this is the state of California, which they should, because one of the biggest gangs that we hear about is from Glendale, California, where apparently there is a ton of these fly-by-night operators that do whatever the heck they want.
I would know a lot about that.
I do know a lot about that. I visited Glendale.
There you go.
And I visited another country I will not name to investigate. I get in trouble.
That's what I was actually gonna ask. So you think during times like right now, right? So during the downturns, or downtimes, that's when the most that's when everybody cares, I feel like. Because when the market is hot, I feel like when the market was hot, like 2 years ago or a year ago, I feel like there was double brokers, but nobody really cared because everybody was still making money. And I remember even back then in the day, everybody was doing like co-brokering, or co whatever. They had a different name for it instead of double brokering, where everybody was just trying to cover both.
Is
but
legally,
now I think
like they have a binding contract, like two brokerages have a binding contract.
Yeah, if they have an agreement that they're going to share the load, that's one thing. But what double brokering is there's no agreement, and it may not even be a broker, right?
Yeah.
The worst is like if the brokering. Sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
If it happens overseas, right? Like, what does the feds even do if it happens outside of U.S. jurisdiction? And like from what I've learned mainly, from Paul and listening to Bob as well, is like a lot of it happens overseas, and then maybe it concentrates a lot in Glendale, but I don't know how the Fed could even step in that's in such a case. Creating new emails, creating new phone numbers is like, even if you block phone numbers or whatnot, I mean, people can just keep creating fake accounts and whatnot.
The business is registered to an American or someone in America.
Yeah. So crazy that we're talking about this, because I literally had 3 articles sent to me today by a friend, and I didn't even open them up. But now that we started talking about it, I just searched it, and Overdrive posted it. Mexican-based double broker sentenced to prison.
Yeah, I saw that.
This was posted yesterday.
Wow.
And then there was a couple more articles that actually released literally yesterday and today. So on February 24th, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California sentenced whatever his name is in Mexico to 30 months in prison, 3 years supervised release, $239,000 in reinstatement, and $400 special assignment. And this was something to do with California too, or District of California, because you mentioned California too. So they're trying to maybe do something.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, and I think, there's too many people chasing too little freight, right? So I told you there's, however many carriers have started, 31,000 brokers or 33, whatever we are at. There's too many entities chasing too little freight, and it's again too easy. And yeah, you're right. What would be the jurisdiction of a federal regulator if it is overseas? I mean, that's a huge concern to us, because there is no way. Again, the only thing you can do is put as much attention to it so it isn't as easy as it is. But you're right.
Sure.
They can spoof. We had a member who I was on the phone with, and he said, just then we were talking, and he said somebody came in where it was his company's name, but with like one digit missing from the email address. And so, and here they are saying that they have a load, and clearly a fraud, because they're the real entity. And it's just it's so easy to do, unfortunately.
Yeah. There's a lot of easy things that even so that's from the broker side. From the transportation side, we were talking about this when we first opened up our own MC. There was literally people running trucks under our MC. I got a phone call. My truck was parked at illegally parked. It wasn't even my truck. I got a phone call. Hey, your truck is parked illegally. I'm like, my truck is not even there. He sends me a picture. It's not even my trucks, but they're running under our signs.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is insane. I tried to reach out. Actually, I tried to reach out to the FBI. I tried to report it. I couldn't even find anybody to report it to. So it was pretty crazy.
And that's the other thing too. We found out the FMCSA has a completely antiquated computer database, which they haven't updated to the modern century. And so it is hard. You'd think it'd be easy for them to check on that, right? But it is not. Right. It's actually really challenging because they haven't been able to update their database. And so
whoever's listening to this, they should have a great idea to get in there and change things around, because I'm sure there's a lot of smart people listening to this. Maybe they can go in there and update it, because we're living in 2023. Come on, people. There's got to be better ways to protect ourselves than having somebody to steal your identity and just run with different trucks.
Yeah, I think the biggest change driver for all a lot of the government outdated and antiquated systems is at least this trend that I'm seeing right now is more kind of privatized government technology startups, where they kind of they build this product or the service, and then they sell it either to the government so that they can provide it on their behalf. And in this case, I mean, I don't think any of us have heard of somebody who has actually come up with a solution for this. But Anne, I have, I was wondering, has TIA ever put a number on this, how big this problem is, how much money people actually get scammed out of on a yearly basis?
I'm trying to think if we did. So we put together a white paper. I have it so conveniently in front of me. But so here's something that will sort of tangentially answer your question without actually answering your question, which is the skill set of a lawyer, in case you're wondering.
Sure.
So we have a member who is a financial institution, and they'll be actually speaking about this at our conference, where they believe it's something in the hundreds of millions that just goes through their system that they believe is some sort of fraudulent or double brokering. And so that's 100%. That is just going through their system. And they have been able to sort of start to discern patterns where they can figure this out, and they want to know how they can help and what they can do with that. And so that's going to be part of what we're talking about, is how can we really use this, and is it turning it over to the FBI, for example? What can we provide that actually will lead to a change in behavior?
Fascinating.
Paul, with what you've seen so far with ChatGPT, now this new capability of being able to scan images or documents, audio, emails, text, and kind of this new, step change in what the world has access to. I wonder if there's potentially this now is the right time or opportunity to potentially make I don't know exactly how such a product would look like, but ultimately you kind of have to validate the chain, I guess, a chain of events somehow. I don't know if that will have an impact, but like, did you have any thoughts on this since you've been, as much as I am, using it?
I haven't, but I feel like ChatGPT could definitely, I guess, check in the future, if someone's a double broker, is a fraud, just ask ChatGPT. I mean, today I pointed ChatGPT as the CEO of FreightCaviar, and I essentially told it what to do, and it gave me a whole weekly plan to all my employees. And so it's unbelievable, unbelievable. I'm not sure, Anne, have you had an opportunity to use ChatGPT?
No, but it's funny you were talking about this last night. I was talking to a friend of mine who said that he's like he's a consultant and they do some financial analysis. And he said he had his financial analysts put together a presentation, and then he asked ChatGPT to put together a presentation. He's like, I think ChatGPT's was better.
Oh, wow.
And
That's crazy.
ChatGPT didn't complain. I said, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable.
So I'm going to admit this. I actually yesterday, my meme was made by ChatGPT. So,
oh wow, which one was it?
Good.
The one with getting an update where it's like emails and phone calls, like dispatcher, like kind of hiding, and then like Jack Nicholson with the axe, like with me looking for an update or something. You could go on my.
Yeah.
It got like 1,500 or 1,600 likes on Instagram, and literally ChatGPT made that. I didn't want to tell anyone that, but I'm like, whatever. Like ChatGPT literally made my meme.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't like it.
So I literally today I'm like,
it's scary.
I'm
it's
like,
definitely scary.
I'm like ChatGPT, or I wrote Hustle. You're now Hustle GPT. You are the CEO of FreightCaviar. These are your employees, and these are their responsibilities. Please tell us a weekly plan of what we should be doing. And it literally just listed out everyone's tasks, what they should do, and it's amazing. It's like. And there was a study done from a Chinese company that appointed an AI CEO a few months ago, and the productivity levels increased. So,
what?
Yeah, I literally think like CEOs will be AIs. I'm sorry, Anne, that maybe not for TIA, but but there is a future for it, and if anything, it's going to be a very helpful tool. I definitely see that.
The only thing is they don't have a soul. They don't have a soul.
I feel like my ChatGPT has a personality. Like, she's really nice. She might have a soul in like a
psychopath.
Chad has a bigger
Eventually.
She has
a bigger soul than Paul.
For me, like, I literally write thank you because I'm afraid like one day she might like want to kill me. So I'm like, thank you, ChatGPT. Like, and she's like, oh, you're welcome. So
do you have to pay for it, or are you doing like
I do the premium for $20 a month, dude. It's so worth it. It's like the best thing for $20 on the internet. You got to make it. You literally, Bob, you'll have an organized life if you use like ChatGPT.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check it out. But I'm kind of on the ants. Yeah, but I'm kind of like on Anne's side too. I'm kind of nervous about this, guys. I feel like it's not going the right way. With this ChatGPT. I don't know.
It will change your life, Bob. It will change your life.
There's like a lot of caution that needs to be applied to it, because it can get like if caution's not applied, it can go down a wrong path. And I think one of the things that you might find it most helpful with, that I've personally also helped with, is I'm a no lawyer by any means, but I was able to at least have it distill information out of a document for me that was multi-page, and I would put it in and say like kind of like, what is the key things that I really want to know about this? And I found that as I started using it more for either condensation of information or actually expansion, so like give it like an outline and say whatever, make me a presentation, then I started realizing that like a lot of what we have in trucking and in freight in general, a lot of it is paper-based, a lot of it is text-based, a lot of it is image-based, where you're scanning documents and whatnot. And I think the whole opportunity, as much as it might be scary for a lot of people, the whole opportunity around finally being able to, I think, digitize a lot of what's a lot of the traffic that's what's happening is a massive opportunity. I think that like this technology wave is going to make a massive effect on, but legal paperwork was a huge weight off my shoulders, like just to be able to consolidate like what's going on in this document.
one of my sponsors asked me for a social media like agreement, and I just literally wrote in ChatGPT like, "Hey, I need a social media agreement for an email newsletter," and it literally just wrote everything out. And I just copied and pasted it, put in my company,
crazy.
put in their company. It literally took me 2 minutes, and if I had to go to like a lawyer, I would have to pay like $500 probably minimum for like a document like that. So
Okay, let me just give you a cautionary tale. So I have a friend of mine who's a lawyer, and he was telling my husband the story. So he had to do a memo, and he's like, "Oh, I'll just see what ChatGPT does." So he's like, "Can you give me the case law on this particular issue?" And so ChatGPT, here's a memo. And one of the cases this lawyer had never heard of. It was obscure, it was old. And so he goes back to ChatGPT. "Are you sure? Where is this case? I can't find it." Like, he looked it up and he couldn't find it. And so he asked, like, "Oh, no, it's here. This is the whole case, and this is the holding, and blah, blah, blah." He's like, "I still can't find it, ChatGPT." And so finally ChatGPT admitted it made it up. It made up the case. So there
That's crazy.
You gotta be careful.
Sure. Yeah.
You can't use it for face value, like 100%. It's like an augmentation tool, but at the end of the day, you still need to, have a stamp of approval. But the really interesting thing was that this new version that just came out 2 days ago or 3 days ago is now able to pass standardized tests that like the majority of the people that take, whether that's a bar exam, whether that's a medical exam, forgot, like AP physics, I think was one of them.
All the AP exams, and the lowest one was AP literature, supposedly, out of all the AP exams. So
it's concerning.
Literature majors are still, hanging on. But
yeah, right.
But to go back into the freight world, I'm wondering, Anne, if you could tell us more about like what kind of regulations, since you're spending time in DC, like what's like, I don't know, like from the political angle of looking into, regulations and like being an advisor, and kind of like, can you give us insights into that world of like what's new besides the double brokering? Like what else like are brokers worried about, or what's going on in DC and brokering?
So there's been a piece of legislation that we've been pushing for a number of years, and it's been reintroduced. And this all goes to one of Bob's favorite topics, which is motor carrier safety selection. And so, as you may know, there has never been a completed rulemaking on what brokers have to check when they're selecting a carrier. So the carriers out there are supposed to be audited for safety by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And so that audit is supposed to reveal whether they get a satisfactory rating, an unsatisfactory rating, or a conditional rating. But there are 400,000 trucks in the United States. The requirement is a physical audit, meaning that FMCSA employee has to go to the workplace and physically look at things. And as you might suspect, 92% of the carriers aren't rated at all. They receive no rating. And so if you think about, if you're a broker trying to select a carrier and there's no safety data that you can find, well, you can figure it out pretty quickly that if you make the wrong choice, something bad can happen. And that's bad for the nation's safety, right? It's bad for the safety of the motoring public. So for years, we were saying, well, there should be some sort of rating system, and physical audit doesn't make any sense. There's all this data out there. You go through a weigh station, you have police data, you have, whatever your state inspection reports. All of that stuff is actually online and can be filtered up to the feds. And then you make your determination if it's satisfactory or unsatisfactory. None of this conditional stuff, because that seems too loosey-goosey. It's either up or it's down. And so what we also find is most of the owner-operators are not rated at all. And that if you don't know about them, if you don't have a relationship already, then that's sort of like, if you're a really, really cautious broker who it's like, I'm only going to deal with those people that I see that are rated, that's 92% of the capacity that's not even available to you. So that obviously hurts the smaller businesses and smaller entities. And it's really untenable. So we've been pushing for legislation that would create this rulemaking to establish this up or down rating. In the meantime, have an interim standard so that you have like proof of insurance, that you haven't been taken out of service at the carrier, and that you have, your license and have MC number and all that stuff. We've run into trouble with our trial lawyer friends. They tend to like the fact that we could be implicated if there were something bad to be happened, that we should have made a better selection. I mean, our argument is, tell us how. We would love to. We don't know how. There is no way to do it. So, we have a model framework of things that you should look for. There are ways that you can sort of try to do your best efforts, and we certainly counsel that, but ultimately that's only so helpful. We would love it if we could actually get a more efficient system.
Sure. I wish we could pull up Bob's data right now and be like, is Bob satisfactory or unsatisfactory?
I bet he's satisfactory or unrated. I bet he's not even rated.
I know that he's not rated, but I'm thinking, for example, like let's say we take all of his data and we were to give a thumbs up or thumbs down, provided what he has currently available.
It would be 2 thumbs up. It would be 2 thumbs up because that's how good we are. But I don't know. I don't know about that. We are doing a lot of. There's so much regulations that we have to deal with from the carrier side. And I mean, we were talking about this. Remember when Flock Freight, they kind of took us off because we didn't have enough inspection. So the thing was like, we didn't have enough inspection. So they didn't know if we were double brokering their loads or what we were doing. But you're not gonna, as soon as you have a truck and you pull into the scales, you're not gonna ask for an inspection. Because if you do, the DOT is there to give you they're not there to give you clean inspections, most of the time. So most people are actually scared to pull in to the DOT to get an inspection. So now you're just kind of risking it. And I don't know if that would really work, to be honest. Like there's too much regulations already on our side and too much.
The regulation is on the trucker. The regulation is on the broker. I mean, yes, but you're not doing anything different than you aren't already required to do. It's just that they're compiling the data instead of physically inspecting you. I mean, look, I love people and I love eyeballs, but what are your eyeballs going to do that the data that exists out there couldn't already do, right? And so it's onus on us as opposed to an onus on a truck driver. And we would work with the carrier interest anyway, because there's always, the devil's in the details of exactly how you get what data is used. But overall, it's not additional responsibility or burdens on you all. It's additional responsibility and burden on us. And what organization goes to the Hill and says, please, we want more regulations, right? I mean, it's sort of insane, but ultimately it's going to help our members and provide a little sense of security to our members, and then also amplify safety.
Well, they should do that to double brokers too, more like that way we know from a carrier side. I mean, we do. I mean, for us, I feel like if we factor, that kind of helps us out a lot, because then I guess the factoring company goes through whoever is the good broker and whoever is not. So we don't really, like for us, we only work with the people that factor, or the only brokers that factor.
That RTS, unless your factoring company approves.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we go by.
Sure. And in terms of the conference that's coming up next month, can you tell us like a little bit about the conference? I was there in San Diego last year, had a great time. It was actually my first logistics conference I've ever been to. I'm really looking forward to going next month to Orlando. Could you kind of give us a breakdown of what should people expect at the conference, and who the conference is, for? Obviously it's for freight brokers, but it's like, there's obviously other entities as well coming. So can you give us a little insights into that?
Yeah. So can I actually go? Can I actually go there as a carrier, or is it only for freight brokers?
No, it's for freight brokers and everybody who cares about freight brokers. Many times we have carriers who are interested, like you are, as to how to get into a brokerage. We have we have the big guys who are big carriers, and then they also have a logistics arm, right? But we also have these small guys who are like, gosh, maybe I should think about brokerage. And so, we've had any and all. We'd love to have you. Bob, sign up, tianet.org. Maybe FreightCaviar.
Yeah, I will. I will actually. I might go.
Well, so right now
in April?
Yeah, it's April 19th through the 22nd, Orlando, Florida. So not very far. You can go to Harry Potter World and Hogwarts Castle, which is,
it's funny. So in August, I brought my girlfriend's from Poland. I brought her to the States. We did like a US road trip for the first time. and she was there. She also, like, her sister came and her sister's boyfriend came. So it was us four. And they all wanted to go to Harry Potter World. Everyone wanted to go to Harry Potter World. And you know what? I'm not going to Harry Potter World. I could drop you off at Harry Potter World, but then I ended up going to Tampa and hanging out with the Sun TMS because they're a sponsor of ours. So that's what I ended up doing.
So you never went.
I never went. No, but I'm looking forward to TIA.
Well, that's good. There'll be so far we have 1,515 people. So last year we had 1,499. We couldn't get that last holdout from the hotel pool to go in, but this year we have over 1,500, and it's really for anyone who cares about the logistics industry and 3PLs in particular. And so we have the associate members, those who are selling a product or service to the broker, right? So software, for example, or TMSs or whatever it is that they're selling. So we have that. We have the brokers, and it's, I would say, probably a 60-40 split, between brokers and non-brokers. And we have this year 6 tracks of education. So you have your general sessions in the morning, and then you break out into 6 different tracks of education. You have fundamentals, right? Your business fundamentals, sort of logistics 101, for example. You have technology, you've got legal, you've got future trends, you've got modes. So what's going on in the LTL space, what's going on with intermodal, et cetera. And so we try to mix it up every year so that there are different things that people hear from. We don't want it to be the same conference because, obviously it's a fabulous networking event and you can really learn from other people and you can meet new people in your space, but it's also, you really want to learn new things. You don't want to learn the same thing and just like, I'm just going to go to the exhibit hall and go sit, and tan by the pool. We don't want that. We actually want you to be in there and learning and trying to improve your businesses. And so here's a couple examples. We're having a session on ports for the first time we've had. We're having a number of East Coast ports. You notice that the West Coast ports, there's been a lot of discussion about labor negotiations out there. Apparently there could be a slowdown is what I'm reading, because they haven't reached an agreement yet on their next labor agreement. So we have the East Coast ports who are trying to make up the difference, right? They're saying we're more competitive. We don't have these labor issues, and you should go east rather than going west. And so that's an interesting discussion to have, because long term, this, and I could talk about ports for a long time, but I won't. But American ports compared to international ports are far less efficient, far less throughput, far less automated, and so that's a competitive disadvantage for America, right? I mean, so what are we going to do about it? Are we actually going to do anything about it? I think it's important to have that discussion. I think there are some, berths in Port of Los Angeles and Port of Norfolk that there's some automated areas, but that's kind of the exception, not the rule. What are we going to do about that? People are very concerned about losing jobs. The longshoremen have a huge sway, as you know. But ultimately, for American competitiveness, we have to do better. So I think that's an important discussion to have. We're also having a discussion about sustainability, which is the huge buzzword that we all talk about. But what does that mean for our industry? So we joined, a number of our members joined the EPA Smart Way program, which basically calculates emissions and how you can limit the emissions that you either directly or indirectly influence. And so that's an important
loads.
Yeah, so that's an important discussion. But what does that mean going forward? How do we calculate that?
Definitely. And just real quick, Bob, to your point, because Bob goes to California often with his trucks, and he's been complaining that California's been dead. And there's a big impact because a lot less countries are shipping, or I guess companies are choosing the Western ports. Yeah. There's also a downturn with the Chinese. Like we're not purchasing as much from China, but the East Coast are more competitive, and they're
they said Chinese New Year's. How long has this Chinese New Year's lasted for?
Yeah, no, it's been bad.
Not just a day. It's a week. It's 2 weeks.
Yeah. I know, it's a couple of months.
And then and the sustainability factor also for trucking companies, like being able to show like what your emissions are. Like some brokers are going to find that important, because large enterprise shippers right now, like Walmart's, Targets, they all have like carbon neutral goal targets by like 2040. and they're gonna make sure that even like their suppliers are adjusting and making like tracking these emissions. So even for trucking companies, it's very important too. So
the best people on that is the carriers that consolidate loads.
Yeah. Well,
but that's not really like legit.
Well, you could do it legit. You could be legit.
Yeah, like
legitimately consulting.
Slack is doing that. Kind of more legit. They're pushing that a lot, where it's only like
all the
LTLs and stuff. So
all the Eastern Europeans from Chicago have been doing it for like a century, essentially. And it's and then Flock came in and they had this huge marketing spend, and they're as if they're like the first movers, kind of like. But people in Chicago have been doing it for years. Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to and the TIA conference. Christian and I will be there, so we'll meet in person.
And for somebody who's attending the conference, what advice would you have, basically in preparation for attending TIA? What advice would you have to make the most out of that opportunity that TIA is creating? As a networking event, as a learning, event. What would your advice be?
Well, if the three of you are going, and Bob is a late addition, but we're hoping for him. If the three of you are going, I would say divide and conquer first as it relates to the education sessions, so that no one misses anything, because there's so much content. So you want to make sure that you have assigned one person to one track and another person to another track, and so that you can at least get as much. And then I think you need to ask questions, introduce yourself to people. We have a new member networking event the first day, and really the rationale is you need to introduce yourself to as many people as possible, because you never know who is a potential mentor to you, or a resource to you, or someone who has made a mistake that you're about to make. You just don't know. And so again, as I said, our members are incredibly generous with their time and their knowledge and all of that stuff. So it's enormously helpful to you to really push your limits. If you're an introvert, you just got to get through it and just make sure that you get to meet as many people as you get. And so the other thing is, we do have fun. And those fun events, though, provide an opportunity to meet more people. So we have any number of receptions and parties and things like that, which are hosted by a lot of our wonderful sponsors and our wonderful members. But it's also not just an excuse to party, it's an excuse to really meet more people. And to the extent one person, please ask that one person who has gone before, introduce me to the people that you like the most or you respect the most, so that I can understand and learn.
To your point, Anne, I actually met two of my sponsors at the Truck Stop event last year. Because Truck Stop sponsored like the event, and we're just having drinks, and two people that I met there are now my sponsors. And DAT sponsored the San Diego Padres baseball field, so they had an event at the baseball stadium in San Diego. DAT did, so it's pretty fun. It's actually a great networking event because you have some drinks, you kind of like more laid back and just having fun.
Yeah.
And I had a couple questions about this. So the first question is there a limit how many people can go there?
No,
there's no limit, so anybody can kind of sign up.
Bob's going to bring his whole Eastern
Bob,
European
how many
gang.
people are you coming? Everybody?
Yeah,
thousands of trucks.
I'm posting at USA Transportation. All my followers just showing up there because they find out I'm there. The other two question is how long is it? Is it a couple of days, and how much does it cost?
Yeah, so I have to get I'm gonna pull it up right now so I give you the most accurate information. Obviously, members get a discount. But
I need to become a member first, because I'm not a member yet.
Well, then there you have it. My screen went dark. Do you still see me?
Yeah.
No, we still see.
Okay, good. Well, as long as you can see me, then it doesn't matter if I don't see you. So I'll just pretend that I can still see you, but I can't. So I'm pulling it up right now. Anyway, so there you are again. Oh, wonderful. It starts on, the actual sessions start on Thursday, Friday, and then half of Saturday. Really a Thursday.
April, what was the day again?
So April 19th is when the
19th.
initial receptions are. So that Wednesday night is where there's a golf tournament. Unfortunately, that's already booked. There's a golf tournament and a bunch of receptions. That's the first night. And then Thursday is when we have the opening session. You'll hear me, which I mean, I know that's why you come to the conference, right? And
Exactly.
right. You'll hear an economic overview from our good friends, the dynamic duo of Noel Perry and gosh, why am I forgetting his name? Don. Oh, he's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill me. I'm forgetting his last name. But anyway, they give the sort of optimistic, pessimistic Jekyll and Hyde view of the economy and where it's going to go. So we have that as an opening session as well. And then you break out into these education sessions and, you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks. You're never underfed. And the other thing is too, that you have opportunities for the exhibitors. So you go to the exhibit hall and you'll have receptions there. So while you're wandering the hall, you'll have a food and drink in your hands. So you'll be doing just fine. But you get to see, okay, who are the vendors in the space that I need to know who could actually improve my business, and why is it valuable for those vendors? Because they make deals there. This is a working conference in that way. This is not just like I'm in Las Vegas, I'm going to see a show, and I got the conference bag. This is like you are working. That even when you're kind of having fun while you're working, you're still working.
Yeah. And
Nice.
Also, Bob, like for you, it's a great time to like meet a lot of brokers that could potentially give you contracted freight at better rates because you meet them in person. And or if some broker ever did you wrong, it's a good place to meet them and actually, you could talk it through.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'm
for
going to
sure.
my FAQs here. All right. So early bird just ended. It's $1,275 for non-member, $1,000 for member after early bird. Early bird was $900 for member and $1,175 for non-member.
Okay. That's not too bad. And how much would it be for me?
Oh yeah, the Bob. Are you talking about the Bob discount?
yeah,
The Bob discount.
honestly,
Yeah.
I think TIA should pay Bob to go there. That's just my opinion. Bob's a star.
Good Lord, Bob.
He has over
Right,
145,000 followers in trucking and freight brokerage on Instagram.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's real impressive.
Just from posting memes. Basically, but yeah.
Posting memes that you got from ChatGPT.
That's me. That's not
Oh,
Bob.
that-
I know.
That's Paul. That's Paul. Paul's memes don't compare
Oh,
to
boy.
mine. My memes are way better.
Yeah,
even got a
it came
whole-
from your
I got-
brain.
My memes are so good that I even got a cease and desist letter from a broker. So
A very large broker, the largest private broker in the U.S.
that you
Uh-oh.
could think of.
I'm not
boy.
going to name any names. I'm not going to guess any names.
Right.
I think the audience.
But no,
can
this was
come
great.
to the
I'll
conclusion.
definitely try to come there for sure. Yeah, hopefully I can make it. So
That'd be
Paul,
great.
hopefully you can remind me and we can go there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of reminding. I had to remind Bob a lot of things, but I'm on top of it. Bob's a good person to remind, though. There's no complaints on my end. So
Yeah.
awesome. Anne, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to us. We had a great
this
time.
was
I had a
great.
great time.
Thank you,
yeah.
guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.